Resolution 25167, which is for an opt-in legislative zoning process. We're going to be hearing from Mayor Tim Keller, Councilor Tammy Feeblecorn, as well as Joseph Greenwald, a volunteer from Strong Towns, Albuquerque. And with that, Mayor Tim Keller.
Stand together. So we're out in front of our old, this was the Range Cafe on Manal, and I remember I had a delicious lunch here after a high school track meet, and that was the last time I was in there. But anyway, let's talk about why we're really here. First off, we're in an area of town that is in need of redevelopment and refresh in all sorts of ways. This is the sort of east side of Manal. It's part of a Metropolitan Redevelopment Area that our councilor has been hard at work on. And we wanted to highlight this particular area because there are a number of things that we can do to help this area. Part of it is what City Councilor and also the business community has come together to create a Metropolitan Redevelopment Area to make sure that there are a host of incentives that can be used in this area. But this is also a prime location where our city desperately needs more housing. Now, we know that we need housing all over the city. That's not lost on anyone. We know that we need about 20,000 units of housing. We know that we have neglected adding housing for decades, and now it is finally catching up with us. We also know that we have done more zoning reforms in the last 3 years than we have in the last 40 combined. So we know we have to catch up, and we're trying to catch up as fast as we can. But the challenge with housing is it takes a while, because obviously like physically building houses or housing takes time, but laying the policy groundwork to do that has to come first. And so what this project today is a part of is our Housing Now package of initiatives this fall that is designed to add and support housing in the areas that we were unable to fix 2 years ago when we tried this. And so we're working on loosening our safe outdoor space rules. That's for housing literally for people on the street. We talked last week about rehab housing. That's the patch bill that we've talked about. And we're going to continue to talk about adding density and height and reducing parking restrictions. I'll wait for that lovely truck to clear here so that anyone can hear me. And so we also know that in our transit areas and transit corridors, we want to build upright and we want to build more densely. You're going to hear more about that in the fall with respect to the IDO changes, as well as something called cottage development, another thing that we're pushing. Now, I'm giving you all that background because now I want to focus on what we're here today to talk about. Because part of the new Housing Now program is a ordinance that is being proposed by Councilor Feeblecorn, and we very much support, and it is about opt-in zoning. And the idea is actually very fundamentally, I think, American. The idea is that if you have your own private property, that you should have a mechanism to choose what you want to do with that property. That maybe government always should not be the one telling you you can only do one thing on your property. So this property, for example, in layman's terms is zoned commercial. It used to be a restaurant. We know there is demand and will and need for housing. If they wanted to do housing now, they could not. They are prohibited from doing that by our zoning law. What we're saying is they could actually opt in to change their zoning to some form of residential or mixed use such that they could have housing. That's all this does. It just allows people to have a choice with what they want to do with their own private property. And of course, it is voluntary. It is literally their opt-in. And so for us, this is really sort of the flip side of what we usually do, which is tell people what to do. This is allowing people to do what they want and what they think is best for the community. And so for us too, we know this is a gateway. That's the wrong term because we have the gateway shelter. This is a pathway to create all sorts of residential housing. But it doesn't have to be for that. We just know that's the need. It could be for other things too. You want to have a business and now it's zoned residential. This technically could work both ways, but it allows people to have that freedom of choice. So with more on this, let's start with our city councilor who's sponsoring this, Tammy Feeblecorn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think everybody that I've spoken to in the city of Albuquerque in the last 3 years understands that we need more housing now. And so I'm really, really glad that we have this Housing Now proposal before council, all the different parts, to really help us provide housing for everyone. Not just low-income housing, not just luxury housing. We need housing of every level. And we're standing in a spot that's perfect for that. This area on Manal has been something that I've been working on since I took office, and my predecessor, Councilor Gibson, started the process of getting this to be a Metropolitan Redevelopment Area. The vision that we all have for this area is that it's thriving again, that we see people living, working, playing right here in this area. And we can't do that with the zoning that it has right now. Everything in this area is commercial, it's a lot of industrial zoning. We really need to allow the property owners in this area to zone up to allow housing. And that doesn't mean just housing, it means mixed use. We can see housing on the top, retail on the bottom, more services, more coffee shops, more restaurants like the Range back open in this area so that we can see vibrancy in this area of our city. So people, again, have homes here, they have jobs here, they come here for fun. That's what's needed, and we cannot do that until we get zoning reform. So I'm very, very pleased with this proposal. I really hope it will pass and that we can move forward with getting all levels of housing into our community again. Thank you.
Thanks, Councilor. All right, and wonderfully, we're joined. Actually, I'm going to let you introduce yourself, but from a wonderful group that has been working on this all over the city, and you can kind of outline your work. And I forgot your last name. Go ahead.
Thank you for having me, everyone. My name is Joseph Greenwood.
Greenwood, that's it.
I'm a volunteer with Strong Towns Albuquerque. Strong Towns is a national organization with hundreds of groups across this continent, and Albuquerque is one of them. We advocate on a number of principles to make cities more livable, walkable, and human places. Because of that, zoning reform is one of the primary focuses of our efforts. And that's why we are excited about these proposals being put forth, especially that of R25167. So a little personal story. I live in West Downtown in a 5-unit complex, which by definition is a small apartment. Me and my 4 friends in that apartment have a shared backyard, fire pit, compost pile, garden. We share dinners, nights around the fire. We have many parties, many good times. I love living here. It's the best place I've ever lived. And whether I stay in this space or I move to a similar one, I want to continue living this way. And I absolutely felt my heart sink when I learned that under current zoning codes, it is actually not allowed on the very property on which it sits to currently build this type of housing, which is small apartments. Not only of my property, but the properties in my neighborhood and many properties across this city. It is literally illegal to build this housing type. And not only this, but it includes townhomes, houses on small lots, courtyard apartments, cottage courts, duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes, small commercial spaces such as coffee shops and cafes, and all the housing that can be mixed with them. Like far too many cities in the United States, Albuquerque implemented a zoning code of the 1960s that made it illegal to build many of these housing types by right. I speak not only for myself, but for many of my friends who enjoy living in these types of housing. And in my time of doing nonprofit and social service work across the city for many, many years, I've seen so many individuals and communities too who do not view these types of housing as a compromise, but as places that they love and want to root themselves. Some of the most meaningful expressions of community happen in these housing types. When we legalize density, we legalize community. And in the process, we overcome the devastating effects of exclusionary zoning that has driven up housing prices and rents and driven homelessness to record levels. Housing is never a one-size-fits-all situation. It never has been and never will be. Let's allow it to express itself organically. Let's enable young families looking to get into the market, young professionals looking for an affordable rental, seniors looking to downsize and split their property. People from all walks of life, let's let them choose what's best for them. R25167 would allow property owners across the city to choose to opt into the type of zoning that would enable them to build these types of housing in small-scale commercial spaces, giving our communities the ability to solve the housing crisis from the bottom up and helping to drive economic development at the neighborhood level. Whether it's downtown, Old Town, South Broadway, Wells Park, Martinez Town, Bareilles, and so many neighborhoods across the South Valley and North Valley, we see the beautiful and still standing remnants of what used to be legal to build in this city. Let's bring this back. Let's legalize Albuquerque's history and legacy of building these incremental neighborhoods that we all know and love. And in the process, let's take a step forward to solving the housing crisis. Strong towns will continue pushing for this dignified vision of community. And I want to thank the councilors, the mayor, the city staff, the grassroots advocates, and everyday citizens who are working so hard to make this vision a reality. Please support R25167. Thank you.
Thanks. All right, thank you very much. And we want to let you know we don't have him slated to speak, but we have our planning director, Alan Varela, here for all sorts of technical questions. So with that, if you want to do some Q&A, that's what we're here for. Thanks.
Does anybody have a question?
Why opt-in? Folks who set up a citywide zoning retail.
You gonna do it first?
I didn't hear. I don't know
Could
what
you
Why
say that
opt-in
one more time a little?
Yeah.
Opt-in
Sure.
instead of a citywide zoning retail.
You know, I think what we've learned is that we want to be both bold and gentle. And so the idea is, look, forcing people to change their zoning. We know that that has been a rub historically with some of the changes, and they've failed also at council. And so we respect that this isn't for everyone. On the other side, we do believe that folks should have some say over what they want to do on their property. So for us, in many ways, like you can call it a compromise, but I think it's more the opposite, where you can have, you know, sort of the boldness of an individual choice, but also the gentleness that we're not forcing anyone to do anything. That was all his talking points. Yeah, I know.
All right, please go ahead.
That's good. You want to do that one? You should both go.
Well, I'll start it with, this is the perfect example. We're here in the Manal Metropolitan Redevelopment Area, and if these kinds of changes are not allowed, this kind of opt-in zoning is not allowed, then each individual property owner in this area has to go and ask for a change in their zone. That's a long process that sometimes works and sometimes doesn't. And so we're adding time upon time upon time to actually seeing the movement in this area that we want to see. And so this is a really interesting proposal in that we have a set period of time. If you apply for this voluntary opt-in within the 6-month period that it's open, you get it, as long as you qualify, right? And so that's a lot better. It's a definite answer. We know for sure that this will work for you. And so at the end of that 6-month period, all the property owners that choose to do that opt-in will then have the A-OK to move forward. That is not what we would have without this type of proposal.
So again, current zoning laws on the books for many decades have been overly restrictive, and that has impeded on property owners' freedoms. It's impeded on the ability to get housing built, whether people are unhoused or they're in an economically insecure situation. This is righting the wrongs of that past, where we can actually have the freedom and the flexibility to build this city as we see fit, because for many decades before the 1960s, that's what Albuquerque was. We just want to bring back the old Albuquerque.
You might say this is essentially handing over the scissors to property owners to be able to cut some of that red tape to push development.
That is a great way to put it. And so if you think about all the frustration that people have with cities all across America, but also Albuquerque, there's all this red tape. This allows them to actually cut right through that red tape, and it allows government to just say yes up front, which is something, right, we're just trained to always say no to all of these requests. This really turns it on its head, and we just say yes, you just got to do it within 6 months.
Is there concerns that this model could lead to uneven development, like inequalities between neighborhoods?
Do you want to do that one?
I can do that.
Okay.
So this proposal is citywide, and it provides the same opportunity for all neighborhoods and every arterial and collector road, every metropolitan redevelopment area. So in that sense, I think it's completely the same. But I do think that we'll see more movement. I'm pretty sure, having talked to all the owners of property along this metropolitan redevelopment area, that many of them will be asking for that upzone, that opt-in process. And so we want to make sure that they are able to do that. There may be other parts of town that no one wants to do that. And again, this is voluntary. It's what the property owners in an area want. So we might see more development in this MR than in other areas, and that is certainly my hope.
I just want to add to that, I do believe this proposal does the opposite. It allows incremental development to happen, block by block. That's something that was lost in Albuquerque and this whole country, and this bill is a huge step forward to bringing that back. It allows a lot of community input, a lot more freedom and flexibility. I think that's the opposite of uneven development.
That was a good question, which is why we're all answering. I also just want to mention, we can walk through the specifics if you want, but there are areas where we're enabling this to a certain degree, and there are areas where we're not in other ways. So example, you can't build a skyscraper like next to a home. So just to be clear, like this is particularly effective around different transit areas and also within the same zoning construct. So you can go from a single to a duplex as opposed to, a giant apartment building. So that's the nuances of zoning. We're happy to answer questions on that, but I just want to let you know that this is, hemmed in to be neighborhood appropriate.
Is that what's going on with the old Wells Fargo downtown?
That one is actually something very different, and that is actually the beneficiary of the changes we did 2 years ago. So we already made it a lot easier to convert an office building into apartments from a zoning and regulation perspective. So that's going to be much simpler and really has nothing to do with this particular new proposal.
Do you guys have estimates how many property owners might opt in?
That's a good one. I think we have no idea. Yeah.
We'll
Good
see.
question, though.
Lots, hopefully. So there's a long process for the MRs. We did get the Metropolitan Redevelopment Area designation approved a couple of years ago, and we've been moving forward on plans ever since. But those plans are kind of stymied until we figure out a way to provide the zoning that is needed to allow those plans to be implemented. The overall plan, everyone's vision for this area is increased housing with more retail, more services, and more fun areas. But those housing units can't come here until we get the zoning that matches that. So while we were ready to go, we just have to get that zoning change before we can really see the fruits of all the labor over the last decade of getting us to this point.
All right.
Everybody.
Good
Thank you very
questions,
much.
everybody.
If we have any additional questions, please feel free to let me know. I'm happy to get those answered for you, but thank you for coming.
Thanks.
Thank you.